Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kit Kramer, one of the committee members, and we're going to dive right into this agenda. We've got the approval of minutes for August 1st. Is there anyone who would like to make a motion to approve those minutes, assuming that you've reviewed them?
Chair, we're waiting on one more committee member to be in the room before we can.
So we aren't going to, okay, good.
There we go.
We're one shy of our 9. She's coming in the room now, so once she gets settled.
Excellent.
Lots of traffic on Charlotte Street.
Isn't that the truth? I experienced it. Okay, is there someone who wants to make a motion? Motion. Thank you, Carol. It's his second. Thank you, Martin. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And those are approved. Under old business, we have the election of officers. Of course, Jasmine is gone for this one. My understanding, I missed the last meeting, I apologize for that, but my understanding is that Jasmine remains willing to be chair if we don't have anyone else indicating an interest. I've been an abysmal member of this committee. I have managed to have a crisis that happened several meetings this year. However, I am willing to continue as vice chair if y'all will have me. If someone else wants to volunteer, that is fine too. And my understanding is that Carol has indicated her interest in the secretary position. And do we have any other nominations?
Move the nominations be closed.
That's second.
I don't know, I will interject, I don't know that Jasmine was willing to stay on.
Uh-oh.
Just, but I was extra, just to make sure.
Rachel shared with me, I thought she was a pretty good source of info, but I could be wrong, I guess. So is there anybody else who has any information that they want to share? We've got a motion on the floor. We're going to wait for Martin to see if he gets a response back from Jasmine.
Typically, the chair role is held by someone who also serves as a member of the Board of Commissioners. So Jasmine has held that seat with the support of the committee, I think since its inception. We do have a new commissioner member of our committee this year.
So if we don't vote for her,
Sitting
guess
to my
who's
left.
in?
I was frantically looking for Jasmine. You gotta be somewhere in this world.
If you bear the bad news, that's right. That's right. So, any word?
I think I was acting on older information than Commissioner Moore was acting.
All right, Martin, so the question is, are you willing to be the chair?
It sounds like I might not have a choice, but yes, I'm willing to serve.
Oh, well, that's good. That is excellent to know. All right, so we had a motion and a second, but can we?
I'll track my motion, but I'm wondering if we want to wait this another month until we find out what her wishes are. I hate to, toss her around.
Attorney, what do
She's
you
not
think?
here.
I don't think there's any rush. You can put it off a month.
I say we put it off a month, then
Yeah, I
that's
think
a
it'd be a
great
little weird. She
suggestion.
hasn't missed a meeting yet, then we throw her off.
Okay.
Would you be willing to fill the other 2 roles so that we can pull executive committee together in between now and the next meeting to talk nominations?
Okay. Any other interest in the vice chair role or in the secretary role?
Move those nominations be ceased.
Linda, was that a second? Okay. All right, so we've had a motion that I would continue hopefully doing a better job of being vice chair, and Carol would be our secretary. All those in flavor, indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? And the motion carries. All right, now we are on to new business, and Rachel, I wonder if you talk with us about side visits.
I will. At the last meeting, at the August meeting, staff made a recommendation to the committee to hold off on doing site visits this year, given all of the activity that we've got going on this fall with the Workforce Development Learning Series. And there was some hesitation to let go of grantee site visits because they have been really valuable to committee members in the past and to grantees in the past. And so staff offered to come back with some options. We did leave option one, this was in your packet, option one on the table, which is to not conduct site visits this year. But we also thought, okay, well, what would it be like if we conducted visits just for new grantees? We only have one new organization joining this year, so that doesn't end up being a very valuable exercise to do one. Option three would just be to go ahead and do them all. That would be 16 site visits. And for a little information, we still have 4 vacancies on this 15-member committee. So it would require each committee member needing to commit to 4 or 5 visits of those 16 in order to get to our kind of sweet spot of at least three committee members attending each site visit. So that's information to keep in mind. And then we went ahead and put a 4th option on the scenario. If in lieu of site visits, it feels important to still have some kind of gathering, we could host an event that has all grantees invited to one session rather than 16 separate sessions. So those are the options we bring forward for the committee's discussion.
Okay, those are the options. Any comments from any of the members? May I make a comment as chair, as a vice chair, not as vice chair? I love option one. I mean, we've been putting a whole lot of work into, or people who've been showing up have been putting a whole lot of work into workforce development. And I don't know what y'all September and October look like, but mine is abysmal. And Rachel, I want to ask, what's been the staff's experience in working with the committee members with regard to site visits? How well attended have they been? I know I've been to a bunch of them in the past, but how well attended have they been? How much work is it to actually get it done?
I know that Angela pulled some data that I used to reference for the last meeting, but anecdotally, they're not very well attended. It's difficult to get to that goal of 3 or more committee members.
Well, and there's something about asking people to put on a dog and pony show when they're very busy also, and not having them well attended that just does not sit right with me. So
When we talked about this last month, I thought we said that at least there were 2 members for each, maybe not 3. We didn't have a situation where we had 1 person. We had one person, or maybe.
No, I think what we do is put out last minute calls if we get down to 1.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
2 to 3 people would be the minimum that we would want.
Yeah. And the other point that we were talking about was I said, how did the grantees feel about, having us there and having to put together the presentation? Did the grantees find it helpful? And in the audience, people were shaking their heads, yes, I don't know about this.
what did they
today,
say? No?
but- Well, they had the option right there. They could have said, nah, not very much or something.
Another thing to consider is that this committee is currently short 4 members. There are 4 vacancies.
Good point.
And I think Misty has her hand up.
Oh, Misty, I'm so sorry. Yes.
Oh, that's fine. I think Susan and I are both out here in the virtual world. I just wanted to say I appreciate everyone's time, and I am just as busy as everyone else this fall. I think it has really been an exciting and both germ-filled fall, so I feel like that should also play into it. But part of this was creating community with the grantees. Could it be an optional? I just worry about people having to leave their day But I also, when we go to visit, it is an interruption in their day. I mean, that's a big ask for somebody to sit and ask questions for, you know, a few staff members for multiple hours. If we did have a gathering event, how optional could it be? And could it be, I don't know, I don't mind to meet, and I do think it's important to create community and to get to know our grantees and to celebrate that. But at the same time, I just wonder if there's some different options for option 4.
Okay, other thoughts?
Well, I noted last year that, you know, because of short staffing, there were issues and some of them felt rushed to get back to cover classes. And I just think that it is an intrusion and an interruption for some of them. So
Other thoughts?
I think option 1 is my preference. Option 2.
We don't have that much opportunity to really get to know who we're funding. And we have the proposal they send in, and if we want to, we can dig through the Google Doc or whatever and find what's been posted. If they're sending in quarter by quarter, probably not many of us do that. And this is eyes on, there's just nothing like seeing it.
Well, and we're not talking about forever though, correct? This is a one-time, 1 year, since we've got to focus on
The workforce, okay.
I'll make a motion to approve option 1.
I think Susan has her hand up.
Susan?
Yeah, thanks. I think I'm only kind of gonna agree with what's been said, so I won't waste the time. I think I was just gonna, say that when I have gone on the site visits, I have learned so much more about the organization than I ever could know by reading the grant application. So I think they are very valuable. And I also think it is hard when we have so much going on. It is an intrusion on our grantees. So I'm fine with taking a reprieve for a year.
Okay, all right, we have a motion on the floor. Al has seconded, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion carries. All right, you'll notice on the agenda that we've said there will be a Board of Commissioners presentation. That is this evening, and Carol and Martin are the ones that are going to be making that presentation. One thing to note, the annual report by the Buncombe Partnership for Children, which was an ARPA-funded effort, will also be making a presentation this evening at the County Commission. You've got copies of both of those documents in your materials, so you can feel free. Is there anything else I need to share about that, Rachel?
Nope, we created a shortcut for easily finding, buncombecounty.org/pre-K report. That's where the 1 year annual report is of the pre-K presentation that will be here this evening.
Well, y'all represent us well tonight. I appreciate your doing that. Okay, on to session 2 of the Early Childhood Education Workforce Focus. Rachel, you want to do our introductions, please, ma'am?
Yes, I will set the stage and I'll be delivering some information in a presentation before we get to the panel. So the big picture, there's a handout and we sent this to everyone via email right before the meeting, and it's been added to the public input page. But essentially saying that this is the second in a 4-part series on workforce development. Back in the spring, after getting through our most recent round of grants, the committee was having conversations about, even though we've already prioritized workforce development in the fund, how can we take it to the next level, or is there additional action that this committee could be undertaking to get at the issues around workforce development? On the next slide, you'll see a snapshot of the series. So here we are in September 2023. We heard a presentation in a panel in our August meeting to help set the stage and understand the issue. I'll recap a little bit of that for you all, and then we'll dig into what does the current landscape look like. Coming back next month and the month after, we'll be talking about promising practices and recommendations for anything that this, again, that this committee could do to level up our work in this arena. So for a recap, Jenny Weil presented a great presentation, and anyone that didn't make it to the meeting can view that online. Engage Buncombe. This is essentially her first and last slide. The beginning of her presentation kicked off with a recap of drivers. So Jenny, thank you for going through that information. Jenny's in the room, and we certainly lean on the expertise of her and her colleagues at Bunco Partnership for Children to help us understand this issue. And then she bookended and closed that presentation with impacts. Like, what is this causing as a result of these issues? I bolded because it's hard for people to talk about the workforce issue in early care and education without talking about compensation and benefits. So I bolded that one. That's usually the first one that people put on the list when they're making the list of what's gotten us into it. But you can see that this is a fairly complex issue that has a lot of different drivers and impacts. On the next slide, while we stay on the topic of compensation, I wanted to share an update about child care stabilization grants, because this topic came up last time. The cliff that our community and communities across the state of North Carolina are facing should these child care stabilization grants, which were funded with one-time federal money and used for compensation, that figure of over $17 million to Buncombe County Child Care Centers over the time period that these have been active. If this current funding ends in December, it will have a significant and severe impact to the workforce because centers won't have the ability to continue that additional pay that they've been adding this funding to. We've put NC Child as a recommendation for anyone who wants to stay tuned on this issue and other related policy or advocacy issues at the state level impacting young children. And I'll share anecdotally that what we're hearing is that Buncombe County Early Childhood Committees is certainly not the only group that's stressing and sweating about this issue. There are discussions in Raleigh about getting this back on the table. And last we heard about having the Senate get it back into their budget. I think it sounds like a compromise. It's not at the same funding level that it had been, and maybe only another 6 or another 12 months using yet again one-time money. If there's additional ARPA or American Rescue Plan Act money that puts further into the future the issue of these expiring.
It kicks the can down the road a little bit.
Yep.
Well, and we had the opportunity at the chamber to meet with Senator Tom Tillis. And I said, we've not been able to crack this particular situation at the state level, apparently, because it was not at that point included in the budget. Nor was the budget completed early in the summer as originally discussed.
Still discussed.
And so I said, I don't know if there's a federal, I don't know what the answer to this is, but is there a federal fix for this in the long run? He did not think there was, disappointingly, but he also talked about, he spends a lot of his time talking with General Assembly members, and we conveyed again, and I had business people around the table who were all nodding in agreement and affirming that it's an issue for business. So I don't know that it will matter, but I tried to plant the seed.
Good, thank you.
Indeed, thank you to Kit and your organization's leadership on this issue.
Happy to do it. It's something we all need.
So pivoting from looking back to looking ahead at this current landscape presentation, what I'll go through is listed here a little bit about what we mean when we say workforce development within this context. Some information about what it takes to be an early childhood teacher and what educational programs are out there to help people who are joining the field. Talk a little bit about financial aid programs and how we as a grant program fit in, and then we'll introduce them and hand the mic to our panelists. Workforce development can be seen as a continuum, with recruitment on one end of the spectrum and retention at the other, and growth and development in the middle. This is a layered and complex topic. Within early childhood, it has to do with that eligibility to participate in the workforce and the credentials and the certifications and the degrees, as well as skill building through ongoing training and education and experience for that workforce. Compensation, I don't know why I put that third instead of first, but to adequate salary and adequate benefits. And what we've heard a lot of our panelists talking about is the resiliency support to make it a career that is sustainable, that's attractive and rewarding and sustainable. For the purpose of today's conversation, I'm putting a bit of a narrowing focus to emphasize classroom staff. So teachers, assistant teachers, floaters, substitutes, those people that would be in ratio in a classroom setting. There are additional credentials and workforce factors relating to administration or staff that might be in support of indirect roles like transportation and food. We'll talk about classroom folks today.
Rachel, can you say something more about bullet 4? I mean, what is it for that's not in the 3 above it?
It's resiliency is a tricky thing to describe, but when it's a high stress environment, regardless of if somebody has the skills and training, it's hard to want to join and want to stay. So what are those things that make it an environment that's supportive? We've talked about the extra needs and challenging behaviors kids have showed up with and families are facing post COVID, and how those have been really on the rise. And so being able to have time away from the classroom, being able to have an additional support in the classroom to help address and make behavior plans, those might be things that are not obviously directly workforce development, but that matter.
Rachel, I think too, sometimes we think of it as not treating child care educators as true educators and as professionals. A lot of times that's how it's framed in people.
Indeed, and one of our panelists, Marcia, who's representing Werner, I love when she refers to the personnel at Werner or teachers as faculty.
Yes, exactly.
It's a slight shift, but it really does
Absolutely.
replace that educational instructors. So a lot of words here. This is a highly regulated field. You've heard the term DCDEE. That's the Division of Child Development and Early Education within NCDHHS, which is the Department of Health and Human Services at the state of North Carolina. And DCDEE is the group that oversees the regulations relating to working in this field and being credentialed or licensed or certified in the field. All classroom staff must have a high school diploma and pass the DCDEE background check.
It's ridiculous.
So low barrier to entry. And then
You think?
Sorry, you mean that on school board? No, just the all the initials.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I agree.
so many acronyms. And then within 6 months of being hired, teachers need to attain a credential, which also has an acronym. NCECC, North Carolina Early Childhood Credential, which I'll talk about on the next slide.
You go through all that, you pay that.
Exactly. There's a lot of
Yeah,
that.
that's right.
And the preparation to just enter the field.
It's great.
So the next slide has information about the credential. It's colloquially known as EDU 119 sometimes because that's the college level course, the 4-semester hour credit course that can help somebody qualify for this credential. And there's a little information on there about what that course covers. On the next slide is some information about another pathway. So as of about a year ago, we now have a testing out option for the credential. We dug around a little to see if we could find information about how commonly this pathway is being used, hoping to get some information back from the state about that. But essentially, applicants can take an exam, score at a certain level, 80% or better, and attain that same credential. Yet a third option is on the next slide under career and technical education. And this is something our local community has done a lot of support around, and we'll come back and talk more about CTE during our panel. Betsy is here in place of Caitlin, if you're looking at your sheet. Career technical education is about lots of different pathways within the high school setting. One of those is early childhood education. High school students can participate in the coursework and their internship, which puts them in the preschool classrooms operated at Buncombe County Schools. There's 3 high schools that have on-site preschool classrooms. 4. Sorry about that. 4. They are all named there: Irwin, North Buncombe, Reynolds, and Robertson. And they then complete their portfolio, and students can graduate from high school after having participated in this. If they have gotten a grade, I think it's 70% or better on their portfolio. Anyway, it can stand in for the credential, and so students can essentially graduate from high school with the equivalency for the credential.
So those students don't have to take EDU 119, they've already taken it, so to speak.
So to
High
speak.
school.
Yes. There's a more complicated process where the community college reflects their completion of the requirements, and it essentially stands in for EDU 119 for the purpose of the credential. Community colleges offer more than only that credential. They also offer the certificate programs and associate degree programs. We have 58 local community colleges in our state. Tamara will talk more about AB Tech. We make their a little bit the biggest. That's the one that's physically located within the county that this committee focuses on. But we know that sometimes people attend other community colleges because maybe the location is better for them. If we have people that live in West Buncombe and they might go to Haywood or McDowell if they're in the east. Maybe language is Spanish language learning is the best format for them, and they end up at Blue Ridge Community College. Stanley is one of those ones that I wouldn't have known without asking around, but we've got local folks that participate in Stanley Community College's online format. Next, we move to bachelor's degree programs. Western Carolina University is the 4-year degree program that we think of most often. They have a BK program that might sound familiar because BK is the birth to kindergarten credential that NC Pre-K requires to be enrolled as an NC Pre-K classroom. Appalachian State, UNCG, and ETSU, East Tennessee State University, are all other ones that come up when we look at where people in the local early childhood education workforce go for their 4-year degrees. Again, people might make the choice to do it based on finances, based on format. The fully online option is what allows local folks to participate in UNCG's program. attending school through Greensboro. East Tennessee State University, what I understand there is if people reside in a county that's adjacent to the state line, they can get in-state tuition. So that is one of the things that makes that option great for some folks. On the financial aid side, you may have heard of NC Promise. This is a state program that provides significantly reduced tuition at 4 universities across the state, including Western. So participating in the BK, or birth to kindergarten bachelor's degree at Western, is a way for the people to access that support of financial aid. I'm going to quickly run through some additional financial aid just to have awareness as part of that current landscape. Teach. We learned a lot about this, I think it was last year, when Susan's team at Dogwood Health Trust issued a report about this early childhood scholarship program. It essentially helps early care professionals access higher ed if they meet certain qualifications. One thing of note related to participating in Teach is that it does require the employer's participation. So not only did they themselves have to work those hours and be in a degree-seeking program, their employer has to opt in, and there is a burden. It's difficult to meet the expectations, and so employers might say, well, we can do 1 a year or so many a year, to which creates essentially, it limits utilization. Wages is another state program. This is a retention strategy. It provides supplemental pay, paid out twice a year. It's funded by DCDEE. I was going to try not to use any more acronyms, but there and Smart Start, which Smart Start is that network across the state, and our local Smart Start is Welcome Partnerships for Children. There is a wait list to join this program based on the available funding. So you can see what some of the criteria are to participate. It's an average amount of a little over $1,000, about $1,100 for a 6-month period that enrolled people or enrolled workers can get through the program. So it can make a really big difference. That's every 6 months. The Infant Toddler Awards Plus program is education-based salary supplements for professionals that work with very young children, birth to age 2. Again, with certain criteria in terms of hours worked and amount of pay in order to qualify. There's another strategy that is out there on the horizon on the next slide called the Early Childhood Educator Apprenticeship Program. It's a pre-existing program, the North Carolina Apprenticeship Program, but the new component, from what I understand coming out of the governor's office, is this Building Bright Futures aspect. We're still seeing this get rolled out and tested. It is funded with temporary funds currently through December 2024, so a little more than a year on the clock for this program. And it can cover additional things, stipends, professional development, transportation for people that are enrolled. I don't know if any of our panelists will speak to it because Caitlin's going to hear about it. Listen for the Building Bright Futures or apprenticeship. And finally, back to us. When we talk about our role as an early childhood committee, as a county, the group prioritized workforce development right out of the gate, saying of all the strategies to try to make an impact within this field, workforce is one of the 5 ways that applicants can qualify. As we did coaching and calls with applicants heading into this grant year, staff, after listening to the committee, encouraged applicants to think about and include workforce strategies in their applications. And so when I had that slide that had the spectrum from recruitment and retention, what I wanted to point out here is that even when a program isn't a quote-unquote workforce development program, they're doing a lot of workforce development approaches. So we pulled a sample that are community-based organizations, providers mostly, although OnTrack's not a childcare provider. Most of the other ones I think are childcare providers that are using some of our grant funds based on what you all chose to support for things like coaching, training, mentoring, education benefits, wages, and other supports for people working in the field in their settings. So we are doing a lot, and a lot is made possible through the support of this fund. We wanted to put together a panel of folks on the next slide that represents those programs that are most specifically workforce development focused. So we've invited Buncombe County Schools. Caitlin is not able to be here today, so Betsy Stockslager will be our presenter about the work that's happening within Buncombe County Schools. Tamara is here, Tamara Reynolds, Chair of the Education Department with AV Tech. Marcia with the Werner Center for Early Learning, Marcia Whitney, and then Tasha Lewis and Deanna Lamont, both from Buncombe Partnership for Children, working from slightly different programs within Buncombe Partnership that are again supported through the work of this committee. And so we've included in the sheets behind the cover sheet a little bit of info about each of these programs that the Early Childhood Fund is supporting. And we wanted to invite our panelists to take about 5 minutes each and share with us some high points and make sure that we're also reserving plenty of time for discussion. One thing I noticed last time was that we had a hard time looking at the vice chair. As I make this comment, we had a hard time getting through all of our panelists because we were so excited about questions. So if I had advice, I'd say, let's go through our panel, write down your questions and save them up, and then we'll use all the extra time we can for that discussion.
Sounds like a plan.
Betsy, take it away.
Wonderful. I am Betsy Stockslager. I'm the director of BCS Learning Labs, which is the 4 classrooms that are housed at our high schools that have the early childcare preschool programming. Rachel, did you say that folks have this information, or
They have this as a handout.
Okay, so I won't read to you. Caitlin had everything prepared and she's sick, so I'm stepping in. But really what we are working on this year, in the next 3 years, Caitlin's position, the workforce coordinator position is funded through Dogwood for the next 3 years, is to really be, as you just saw, all of the requirements and all of the navigation, really helping make sure that students who complete the early childhood education course are able to get that on a college transcript, because that availability is there, but that takes navigating. And if they're seniors, they're leaving us before we can help facilitate that transfer of obtaining that credit. So this position really is working to make sure, like, that's step one. You don't leave our program without that support of having EDU 119 equivalency on your transcript. And then again, it's really the opportunity that our high school students have had to enter the field has always been there, but it needed facilitation, as you can see through all of the information. Like, that was 6 slides of hoops, right? And so helping our high school students navigate that entry into the workforce, if they would like to do that, as well as the Building Bright Futures. So we recognize that we have our internship program, and we've called it, you know, it's through the CTE, Career Technology Education Program, that we have our interns on site, But if they're in that program their junior year or early on in their high school career, we can place them out into the field, and then they can become part of that Building Bright Futures pipeline. So it's like Rachel alluded to, that is just currently in the works. We received the funding for this position almost in tandem with the state getting the new apprenticeship program. So it's, everybody's kind of figuring it out together. And that, Caitlin last week had a meeting and she's like, I'm so excited to tell you about it. So to be shared. And just a little bit about our learning labs. We rebranded our classrooms as that because it's, really from play to purpose, building future educators, but it's helping the community realize that not only are your 3 and 4-year-olds coming into a high quality 5-star preschool program, but our high school interns are learning those domains of early learning, and that there are high school students in our classrooms, and that's the unique opportunity as a lab setting, one that is often sought after in the field of being able to learn with the little ones as you're learning the theory, you're putting it into practice. So probably spoke too fast, but there you go.
Thanks for having us. I'm Cameron Reynolds. I'm the chair of the education department. And just as a little background of why we applied for the grant, prior to 2015, AV Tech had 3 full-time faculty members. We offered 1 degree and 3 certificates. After 2015, when people retired and left, we went down to a 2-person department, and we now have 5 degrees, and we're about to add our 3rd certificate. So we had fewer full-time faculty members, more degrees and certificates. Currently, in any given year, we have somewhere between 150 and 180 students in the early childhood program. And I think that's what a lot of people miss when they talk about the pipeline to becoming a teacher. Most of our students are working in the field, and all of our students are part-time. I currently do not have a single student in the early childhood program who is enrolled full-time. Our 3 degrees in early childhood are associate and applied science degrees. That means one is a 65 credit hour program, the other 2 are 70 credit hours for an associate's degree. So if you are working full-time in childcare, that means to finish in 2 years, you have to be full-time for 5 semesters. Nobody can do that. So now you're half-time. What does that mean? 2 classes, 3 classes? How many classes can someone working full-time really balance? So all of a sudden you've stretched this out to at least 10 semesters or more just to finish your associate's degree. So then when we talk about NC pre-K and we want people to have a bachelor's in teacher licensure, now they, have to go on from there, still usually part-time and working in the field. So we lose students not because they don't want to get a degree, but I just graduated a student in May who had been enrolled in our program since 1998. I have another student who will graduate in December in the same situation, that they have been consistently over time taking classes for sometimes 25 years, because they'll take a class or 2, then they fall off the face of the earth, they switch employers, then all of a sudden they need more credits. They come back. If I can make a class work, great, but over the time of 20 or 25 years, some of the classes that are taken are no longer part of our degree program. So I actually just was able to get someone to finish in August who had taken an old class, and I was able to do some substitutions, and rather than her having to take 3 more classes, she was able to finish the degree. So I think that's part of what we see is you're serving so many students, most of them part-time. Not everyone comes back every semester. So we really wanted to have an additional faculty member who can provide that direct student support. Because if I was an English teacher, a history teacher in arts and sciences, I would only be advising 30, maybe 35 students. I personally have advised 110 students since April. So, and then, everyone has life issues, but our students, when they're working full-time in childcare, all of the things that, Rachel just talked about with low pay, the stressors, when we talk about resiliency, something that we were able to do with the money from the Duncan County Early Childhood Fund was we brought some people from Program Child Development Institute to do some presentations on challenging behaviors. If you don't spend a lot of time in early childhood classrooms, that's what I would say. Get out and see what's happening in the classrooms. I started teaching in the classroom in early childhood in Chapel Scarborough City Schools in 1997. And I've seen some things recently with my students in their classrooms that are just, I can see why at some point they just say, I can't come back. You know, if you've never seen a 4-year-old stand on a desk and scream and swear and throw a chair at somebody, when we talk about resiliency, it's not just the pay, it's not just the professional level of professional recognition. It's the fact that at some point you know you have to walk in there again, and there's just not this people out there to support those behaviors. So we're thrilled. I mean, we were able to bring on a third faculty member because we got the money from Montgomery County. We were able to leverage that and also got $510,000 from Dogwood Health Trust. So that brought on a fourth faculty member, which was beyond my wildest dreams. But where our students really struggle is that pre-COVID, we were offering in-person classes in the evenings, and we were offering classes until 2018 during the day. That childcare centers would have a substitute or a floater come in, and students would come over and take classes from 1 to 3 p.m. I can't imagine ever being able to get back to that. We do not have people in place for that. So students are struggling, and now they've migrated to all of a sudden they're fully online. And that is a challenge for some students. But it also means that, like you all said, we learned so much when you did the site visits in person. When we see our students in person, we know. I've had students who've had babies. I did not even know they were pregnant because I did not see them, and they didn't think to mention to me, by the way, I'm pregnant, until the baby was born. So we know when we see students in person that we find out that information, they can be more successful. So we use that Dogwood money to, I don't want to say bribe, but drive students. How can we get you here in person? How can we have a captive audience? And that was, we will give you free tuition, books, fees, a loaner laptop, other support, but you have to come once a week in person. And we have 20 students enrolled in that cohort that started 3 weeks ago. And the goal is to get them to their early childhood certificate in 2 semesters. So even if we had half of them finish in 2 semesters, that is a lot faster than most of them typically would. So our hope is we just hired Erin DeBrine, who's been a person funded with the County Fund money. She started August 14th. Welcome back to the semester. And our hope is that we've had so much excitement, and the students are thrilled to be here in person and to have people to talk to, and just everyone's so excited that our hope is that Erin will then kick off a second cohort in the spring, which hadn't even been on our mind, but we've had so much. So I know you all said you're not going to do site visits, but anytime you want to come and see our spaces, please, we love having people, but I cannot express like how excited these students are to be in a class face to face. And 8 of them have never been in an early childhood classroom. So that was one of our goals when we talk about funding with Teach. You're only eligible for Teach if you're already in early childhood. So how do you get the new people? How do you convince people to come into this field? And so we have a physician. She's left the field and she wants to go into early childhood. And because of this program, we've had at least 10 students who said, I would not have been enrolled in classes in AU Tech if it weren't for this. So we're so excited. So now we have 4 faculty members. We have reduced course load for those grant-funded faculty members so they can provide more student supports. We're going to use some money for things like gas cards. I mean, even just 2 weeks ago, being able to provide dinner for students, that's huge. But, you know, we've kind of asked them where they need support, and that's it. Financial support for food, childcare. We haven't quite figured that out because we can't have childcare on the campus, but if they're coming in the evening, we have 8 students who have their own children who are under age 18. So what do you do about childcare with evening classes? And yeah, I mean, we've got a broad range. We've got, like I said, a physician. We've got people that have a GED or high school equivalency. We've got one student right now whose biggest concern is her son who's incarcerated. So it's getting the students in person for this work. So we're thrilled. I'm so glad we were able to get funded from the county and get the dollars. But come meet our students. They love visitors. We love visitors.
You say Erin's last name again?
DeBruyne. It's DeBruyne. I have DeBruyne and Pokorski as our other new persons. It's like that one I can do because I'm Polish also.
Hi, I'm Marcia Whitney with the Learner Center for Early Learning, and I just love hearing what all of my colleagues and partners in the field are doing. None of us could possibly begin to do this alone, and it is so wonderful to be part of a teamwork, really a fabric of organizations and who are doing service and supporting and just being part of the network of attempting to do the best we possibly can for children and families and our colleagues in this community. So just want to say that up front. Today I was asked to speak a little bit about the grant-funded program that Werner was fortunate to receive. It was a 3-year grant request. We received funding for year 1, so I'll tell you about what we're able to do given that known factor in our planning. Basically, it is the Early Childhood Education Workforce Development Initiative Pilot Project, was the clever name Caitlin came up with. And it's basically attempting to, as we all are, address the workforce issues in our community with a 2-pronged approach.
What, no acronym?
I know. Well, we got plenty of acronyms. You want me to throw them at you? I can do it. So we're doing it in 2 ways. The largest and the most evolving piece of it is our residency program, which is new. This has not existed at Werner before. There have certainly been other types of residency programs around, but we're kind of creating it from whole cloth right now, which is pretty exciting. The basic model is it's a 5-month residency program where someone who is new to the field of early education can be embedded in an infant, toddler, or preschool classroom for 5 months. They are not serving in ratio. They are there to learn. They're there doing their academic studies, and they're basically just learning and supporting without the responsibilities of being a faculty member with parent interactions required and all of the different health and sanitation requirements and licensing requirements. And the whole idea is that they are free really just to learn and to learn from other experts. And so we do have the classrooms that they are able to be placed in is only a certain number of classrooms we can put them in because we want to be sure they're with an experienced educator who can help them to learn best practices and share their own knowledge as a professional who may have a degree, who may have been in the field for a number of years. So that's an important piece. Obviously, the whole goal is just to pour all the information they will need to be successful once they open their wings and learn and fly and become a faculty member in ratio, hopefully the following semester. So that's one piece. So the residency program is the most innovative piece of it. And the other element of the grant request that we had been fortunate to get funding for 1 year is compensation specifically for faculty and for our center directors, not for any of the administrative support team members. So we requested that, fearing that stabilization grant funding may not be renewed. At Werner, we have been able to figure out how to keep our stabilization grant compensation levels while making other sacrifices, and sacrifices not too strong of a word, in our budgeting process. So we've made we actually have reduced our entire faculty team, our assistant teachers in classrooms. We have less of them, and that is very concerning for us from a resilience perspective, from having the depth on the bench to support when someone's ill. We had a COVID issue last week that caused cascading problems. We figured it out, but you all know this is what this work is. So we were able to increase just a little bit what our stabilization grant compensation levels have been, so that if you are an assistant teacher in an early education classroom at Verner, your base pay on our salary rubric will now start at $16 an hour. And then if you have training, experience, skills, you're speaking an additional language, you can offer other skills, it might go up from there, but the base at 16 for an assistant teacher and lead teachers at 18, again as a base, depending on all the other education and qualifications they may have. It could go up from there. But so we can say, great, that's wonderful. And then you think about what is the living wage in Buncombe County. Right now it's $20.10. So we all know, I don't need to tell you all the implications of that and the real life realities of that. So it's not enough, but at least it's something, it's better than it would have been if we had not had the support from this fund, which has been definitely instrumental in helping us to keep some folks, especially when they've had information coming to them like, oh, yes, we're keeping your salary, but your health insurance premiums are going to go up substantially. You know, none of these decisions are easy to make, but we need to figure it out as we go. So that's the overarching piece about this grant, and we're hoping that if we, depending how the conversations evolve, if we are successful in getting years 2 or 3 of funding, then we will obviously be able to increase the impact quite a bit. So in terms of the numbers of people who are benefiting, the residency program is a deep impact on a very small number of people. Over the course of the first year, it will impact 3 budding faculty members, hopefully. And we actually had an individual come forward this semester, and she is doing her degree program through AV Tech and wanted to be, wrong pronouns. They're doing their degree program through AV Tech and wanted to have the opportunity to do this program even in the first semester, knowing that it's really, we're kind of building the plane as we're flying it. Ashley Parks is my colleague who is adjunct faculty at Warren Wilson College and is leading the development of this program. So our resident for the fall semester is working really closely with Ashley to help identify. It's great because they're doing this and just kind of exploring together what are the best practices and what's the way that they're going to be able to make that work. So we'll have 1 student go through the program this fall, and then we'll have 2 more. We have the funding for 2 more residents in the spring semester. We already have someone who's expressed an interest for the spring semester. So, and we're barely at the beginning of the fall semester. So I'm optimistic that we'll have at least 1, at least 2 other folks wanting to do the work in the spring as well. And in terms of the numbers served on the compensation side, that number is much larger and just easier because it's part of our salary spreadsheet. So we are estimating to serve 56 individuals who are, again, faculty or center directors. So we have 3 center directors at our 2 sites, and we have currently 41 individuals who are benefiting from the compensation benefit, but we know there's going to be transition. So we know we're going to get closer to 56 by the time June rolls around, unfortunately, because of the turnover and all of those pieces. If we were to be funded for the 2nd and 3rd years, we'd be able to have each semester 3 residents. So we would be able to have 6 residents in the fall, in total between fall and spring, and again, 6 more. So we'd benefit about 15 people over the course of the 3-year grant. And with the 56 faculty and center directors getting compensation benefits for a 3-year period, that would be 168 total people benefiting from that over the course of the 3-year grant, if we're able to do that. That is a duplicated number. Hopefully there'll be some folks who start at the beginning of year 1 and are with us for 3 years, but it would still be benefiting 168 households over the course of that time. So the parts that were really strong and why we're really glad we're able to do this work. Ashley Parks, I bet many of you know in the community, she has been doing early education as a professional for 28 years, a lot of it in this area, this county. She obviously deeply understands what is needed, what it is to be an early educator. She herself has been in a classroom making it happen every single day. She herself has operated her own family child care home. She has operated a burner center. So she's got depth of experience across multiple different ways that early education can be offered to children and families in our community. And So she's a great person to lead that. And plus she's got all the degree programs and all of the, all the expertise and knowledge of how to do it well. So, and then also she's building relationships with Buncombe County Schools, with AP Tech, with Morton Wilson, with a variety of different other programs in the area that are offering these services and thinking about this with us. And then Ashley is receiving support from Gabriel Guyton, who also many of you know, who herself is just literally, if I had to name on two hands, early education professionals in our country, Gabriel's probably on that list. She's just amazing with the degree programs from Bank Street College in New York. And so she's supporting Ashley as Ashley's developing these systems and this model and really helping to think about what it can and should look like with very strong expertise in infant and toddler care and all the degrees and credentials. I have this in so the challenges we're facing is that this is just new. It's anytime you're doing something new like this, you're putting yourself into a brave space. I feel like it's going to go well, we hope, but we don't know if there'll be bumps along the way that we can't possibly anticipate yet. Another factor that's in my mind is just a reality that Werner and every organization that we want to partner with this in his work is facing is that everyone is thinking about their own budgetary challenges and all of the realities that they need to make and the business decisions that they need to make for their own organization. So right now we have these partnerships lined up. I hope that will remain true, but there are, us and every partner, we're having to think about, are there tough decisions we need to make that aren't what we wish we could be making for decisions? And so there could be, I don't know that there will be, but it's possible that there could be some shifts in who the collaborators are and who the partners are and what the work looks like together based on, if you need to reduce workforce to be able to sustain your workforce without stabilization grant funding, for example. So we don't know what that potentially could be. We're hoping that it won't be anything dramatic, but it's possible. And so just for next steps, we're just trying to think about what the spring looks like. And I think we're pretty optimistic. As I mentioned, we do have a young high school student who's already expressed an interest in moving forward in this kind of a model, not committed yet, but we're in conversation. So I feel like it's really exciting and the potential to realize what this could mean for the workforce. And we would certainly welcome folks who go through the residency program to remain at Werner, but we also know that we may have other partners in the community who would also benefit from a residence or may prefer to be in a different center-based program or in a family child care home setting. We're not invested in where they wind up after their residency. We're just glad we can help be part of the water that raises all boats, hopefully, in building the workforce in general in our community.
Thank you, Marcia. We have Tasha listed first and then Deanna. When we were thinking about the flow, you just happened to receive it in the other order. I think that's my fault. So we'll pass next to Tasha Lewis and then Deanna.
Before we start that, I just want to mention again, if anybody wants to make a statement at the end during public hearing, you need to have signed up so that we can anticipate how much time that will take. Sorry.
And Philip, will you pass that sheet toward Kip so that we can budget whatever time we need.
Hi, I'm Tasha Lewis from Buncombe Partnership for Children. I'm the Workforce Development Director. I've been a partnership for 5 years now. It's crazy to say. And the program has been up and running a little bit before I came to the partnership, so almost 6 years before I came to the partnership. And so, of course, it was, as you can see in your handouts, that it was, a program that was developed to help address the childcare crisis. We have been very, very fortunate to continue to get funding from the county to run this program for as long as we have. And so, yes, when Marcia said, oh, we don't know about the bumps in the road. We were flying the plane as we were building it at that time when we first got grant funding. And so we've been very fortunate to learn a lot along the way and to build and make that program better so that we can continue to get funding. This workforce program is a 6-week in-person program where we meet once a week. We provide dinner and childcare for our participants who join the cohorts. mostly based on some learning experiences and through all of the paperwork and requirements from DCDE, we have limited our cohorts to 10 people because we were feeling really adventurous at one point in time. In our last cohort before the pandemic, we had 25 people in that cohort. So that was interesting. 25 traveling folders with all of the requirements, all of the trainings, all of the documents, all of the paperwork for 25 people, and it was just the staff of 2 people trying to get that paperwork done. So I know a lot of us are sitting here like, that is a lot of paperwork. But so we've limited our cohorts to 10 people, just so we can keep our sanity as we bring new childcare workers into the field. Our training series consists of 24 hours of training with an overview of state level requirements, CPR and first aid, health and safety trainings, sanitation rules, trauma and resiliency. And we don't just talk about trauma and resiliency as it pertains to the children that we work with. We talk about what's happened to us when we were young and our relationship with school, and talk about how important it is to really be mindful of how we were treated in school and the things that we've seen in school and how that reflects on how we are as teachers. And anti-bias education, and then of course managing challenging behaviors, because there, as Tamara said, there's a lot of not new, but a lot more challenging behaviors than what we probably experienced over, the previous years. We still have been very, very fortunate enough to be grandfathered into the living wage for Buncombe County with Just Economics. And so once the participants go through the background check with DCDE, get fingerprints and do all of the things that checklist of things, and go through 8 hours of classroom observations where we actually partner with Berner, we partner with Buncombe County Schools, we partner with JCC, we partner with Christine Avery Learning Center, so that we can get our participants who haven't been in the field, out in the field to see kind of like what they like. We'd love to take them to bigger centers, smaller centers, private centers, family childcare homes, so that they can get an idea of kind of where they want to be if they decide to take that step and be a substitute in any childcare center in the area. And so after that training series, they receive a stipend based on the living wage. And then we place them as substitutes in childcare centers. We get requests from centers in the area. At this, Betsy's laughing because we don't have any subs right now, which is great for us because they've all been hired. So they all have the goal, the ultimate goal is for them to have full-time work. And that's been great, but again, I'm so sad. I'm like, I gotta tell them no, because we don't have anybody, but that's the ultimate goal. We want our participants to come to the program and feel ready to be able to go out into the childcare field and be able to, feel comfortable in what they're doing and find the center that's right for them. And also, thinking about we have a lot of the participants that we work with, my team and I work with are BIPOC single mothers. And so we do our best to where we kind of negotiate with the centers, like, hey, you want a sub or you want an employee? Do you have a slot for my participant who has a child who is about to be 4 or about to be 3 or, entering the field? And so we try to find ways that we can help break barriers by, if you scratch our back, then we'll scratch your back kind of thing. And so we've been very, very lucky to have that happen for a lot of our participants. Just like I said, we run 4 cohorts during the fiscal year, 2 in English, 1 in Spanish, and 1 bilingual, where we have simultaneous translation with Sensole, the social justice language co-op that is housed in Emma community. And so we work really closely with them, and they help us translate documents because, as we all know, it takes the state a long time to translate anything. So we have had all of the paperwork that is required translated. We have had NC Felt, the course book for EU 119 that's using EU 119 translated in Spanish. And we work with Insole a lot because we definitely want to be a vehicle for all participants who are interested in the early childhood field, and we don't want, there's a lot of barriers, and language shouldn't be one of them. What else? We've been fortunate enough that we were able to hire a coach for our team. Our coach is out in the field and really focusing on self-care and well-being, because sometimes we all forget that. And sometimes we just need a break from the classroom. And at the time, we had substitutes that were able to come into the classroom so that the teachers could come out. We've had many substitutes that ended up going off and being hired at the child care centers in the area, or even starting their own in-home child care. I don't want to say center because there's a certain amount of kids that you can have in there that aren't yours, but providing in-home child care. And we feel very fortunate that we prepare them. And I joke with my participants all the time and my staff all the time. I'm like, we're not going anywhere. Just because you completed the program, you're going to hear my voice. You're going to see my number pop up on the phone. Just because you got hired, guess what? I'm going to come by and see you. It's the continual support to let them know that, let participants know and let teachers know that we're still there. And just because you're finished doesn't mean that we're finished. Our relationship is finished. I think that's it. And on to Deanna.
So I will be quick. I wanted to be last because what I'm doing is not a full-blown kind of workforce development program like the other folks are, but I just wanted it to be part of the conversation that there are some pieces of the ARPA-funded pilot that are very specifically focused on workforce. One of them, which we have some lessons learned at this point after 1 year of implementing pay parity with K-12 licensed teachers for the NC pre-K licensed teachers. Who have the same exact piece of paper as a kindergarten teacher in the public schools. That average for NC pre-K teachers, they got an average of $8,500 salary increase last year.
Wow.
Put just from taking them where they were to K-12 pay parity. There were some teachers who got over $10,000 raise, especially those that had more years of experience in the classroom. The other piece that I will just say is kind of, Funds and Partnership, as Tasha said, we've been offering this workforce development program for 6 years, focused on getting new people into the field. When we were developing the ARPA proposals, we heard a lot of directors saying, I have teachers who want to go to school, or they try to take the class and I just don't have the time to support them in that. So the other main workforce piece in the ARPA grant is what we're calling higher education supports, which is really a coach. It's one person that the ARPA funds have funded to, she does all kinds of different things really, but working with people who are already in the field, who are in a degree, a certificate or a degree program, mostly early education degree or certificate program. Some, we have people who are doing the early childhood certificates through EduTech. We also have people who are getting their associate's degree, their bachelor's degree, their AA. We have one or two who I think are working on a master's in early childhood. We did not limit it to just like the birth to kindergarten degree or certificate that that NC pre-K teachers need. We were trying to, with this piece, we wanted to grow the pool of educated, qualified teachers across the board. And that's been super impactful. Coach Amy, who is that early education coach, worked with 26 people last year, or she's got more this year and a waiting list now. 26 people last year doing a variety of things. You know, some of them she just sat with them and taught them how to use the online platforms, like how to find their classes or just how to register online. She went with them to EduTech and to Blue Ridge a couple times, I think, to register with them because those pieces were real barriers to folks. She also just checks in. She has a couple people who say, I need you to call me every week and ask me how I'm doing and make sure I'm doing okay. Other people, you know, like, yeah, I'm good. You know, maybe call me at midterms and make sure everything's going okay. But she really responds to where folks are. I do just want to point out that at the end of spring semester, when we surveyed people, 100% of those participants said that support is making it more likely / more possible that they will stay in early childhood education. 100% of the participants responded to that. So yeah, I will be quiet, but those are things that are really having an impact, and there are lessons learned.
What's Coach Amy's last name?
Amy McNeil. She's great, and she's been working closely with EduTech with their grant funded project.
Oh, we've got time for questions, so let's continue. I've got one. Challenging behaviors have been mentioned several times. And I know the behaviors have always existed. Is it because very young kids aren't getting socialized? Is it because their parents are under so much pressure from other things? Why? Why are we seeing more challenging behaviors?
All of the above.
Okay.
All the above. I mean, stress. I mean, even now, there are school districts closing because of COVID again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this generate the children that are in schools right now. These were the babies that were made during COVID. So the stress of the parents in the home, during that time, the stress that was on mothers during that time is, you know, transferred in. Yeah, and they haven't been out. They haven't been able to be socialized. They didn't have any siblings. Yeah.
So they're just not learning the skills, the social skills either.
Even social cues during COVID, if you were a toddler and that was your first experience, you didn't even see your teacher's face for over a year because they had to be masked. So how do you talk to and sing with and interact and express emotions with a toddler when you literally had a mask on the entire time? You know, so, and for me also, I think it's, as a provider of online learning, I recognize that my experience going through a bachelor's and master's degree in early childhood where my classes were face-to-face, and I also had opportunities to see what other teachers were doing. Some of what we see with challenging behaviors, the behaviors have always been there, but teachers are not necessarily prepared for that because so much of their learning has been online. and you don't even have time to see what the teacher next door is doing in their classroom, much less if I work at the JCC, I can never get over to Werner to see what Werner is doing as a classroom teacher. And so their practicum experiences are different, their observation experiences are different, and when we brought that group from Frankfurt to Graham, part of what we did was just let all the teachers who come say, here's a problem that I'm having in my classroom. Does anyone have ideas? And one of the teachers is with Ashland City Preschool. She's one of our former students. She's been in the classroom for over 20 years. And she said what this huge problem was, like it was causing them so much anxiety. There were so many easy fixes that people came up with, but in the moment in their classroom, they really could not think of any. And if they'd had the chance to just go to the classroom next door and ask, hey, do you have any ideas? They might have gotten some, but you really just don't have the opportunity to share that information. Everyone's so overwhelmed.
Even before COVID, United Way, we brought in some principals, elementary principals, who were talking about the need for behavioral health. And I was like, why now? And I don't know if it was the difference between the instructors and their kids in terms of socioeconomics and what they knew. So that's why I'm interested in whether it's still a holdover from that, because it just seems like there's a booming need for behavioral health everywhere, all kinds of settings.
Can I speak?
Sure.
I just want to say kudos for pulling in Franklin Porter Graham. And part of the reason they are working so hard to support teachers is because previously in the past, a lot of our foundation was transactional, where we were using things like reward jars or stars or sticker charts or things like that we found in the primary school. And we didn't understand that it needs to be relational, and with this, pandemic, we have strayed even further from being able to relate to each other. So learning new methodology that's based in relationship, based in how we're building a classroom community is so, so important. And I really just want to just send a kudos to Tamara for pulling in Franklin Porter Graham, because we are receiving classes from them as well. And it really has been a big change in mindset to understand that before we weren't addressing it well, and now it's such a crisis because of what has happened during the pandemic. So kudos to all of you for addressing it.
Thanks for that. All right, guys, but we only have time for another couple questions. So anybody else have questions for our panelists? You guys were very thorough too. I've just got notes everywhere.
I have one question, sort of real concrete. When we talk about the workforce shortage, how many people are we really talking about in order for every center to feel fully staffed? What is the scope? Is it 50 people? Is it 100 people? Is it 250 people? What are we really talking about needing to put into the workforce to get the workforce to a level that everyone would want? That they don't have a handle on,
So they have that data point in their heads?
I thought it was 200.
I'm
Yeah, I feel like I'm Jenny.
I'm looking at Jenny.
Yeah. Okay. We know from 2019 to the last data point we have, which I think is within the last 6 months, that we have 100 fewer teachers and administrators, 100 fewer people working in Buncombe County licensed childcare. So if we just go from that, which I think if you were to ask people in 2019, do you have enough? They would have also said no. But if you're looking at a drop from around 970 to just under about 870, that's huge, right? You're looking at the percentage of people who were working in the community.
Well, and also consider this is not a child care data point, but we are now tied for the lowest unemployment in the state, Raleigh. And prior to for 5 years, we were the lowest in the state prior to COVID. So we've always had a low unemployment rate, which is good on one hand, but it doesn't reflect how many people may be underemployed, that type of thing. All right, questions, comments? Yes, ma'am.
Is the CTE type program offered at Asheville High?
It is, and so what we've done is started to work with them and have meetings with them because, again, all of us in this room, there's not a it's mine mentality in early childhood. So we wanted to really establish this year within the 4 high schools that we're in with Buncombe County schools, but Caitlin's already started to reach out to Suzanne Smith and the lead teacher over there, because if we learn something great, we're going to share it. And that's a yes.
I think it's very important that when we talk about how many programs do we have in Buncombe County, then we give the full number. And when we say the schools, we say Asheville High.
That's
Yeah.
a good point.
I missed that when preparing the presentation, so I'm gonna make a note to try and learn more.
Great.
I didn't realize they have a CTE credential for that.
They do, and we've brought them into conversations, but again, because we have the 4, we're like, let's figure it out here and then share it there. So those conversations are ongoing and starting. So we just started it 2 weeks ago.
Please join me in thanking our panelists. We have one public comment, Happy Asiva.
Are you ready for me?
Sure.
This is an appropriate.
Yeah.
Question.
Happy, I'll keep your timer.
Thank you, Rachel. I wanted to share a little bit with the commissioners and the committee. This evening, the Asheville City Schools Board of Education is going to be looking at a letter they received from the county manager asking the board to consider trading the Asheville Primary School property for a promise, at least what we can see in the letter, a promise for construction of a maintenance and storage facility on excess property at Hall Fletcher. The concern that I would have with that is 3 different things. One, the letter is very broad in the possible uses for the property. I think it's absolutely vital that we get the 15 classrooms back into service for early childhood education. That's a top priority, and I hope that the commissioners would focus on that and kind of clarify their vision so that we don't have different groups in the community fighting over the potential uses. The other piece is we have a former superintendent who shall not be named, who estimated that the replacement value for APS based on $200 a square foot construction would have that replacement value for APS be $24 million, not including the cost of the property. And doing a straight swap for some new structures might be insufficient. Though we definitely appreciate the commissioner's support for early childhood education in the Asheville Schools District. The other issue is I got some great advice from Commissioner Whitesides a couple of years ago talking about the Asheville Middle School. He mentioned to me that when he was on the school board, that there was discussion about selling off part of that property. And if they had sold it off, they would not have been able to do the new construction. So I think about long-term, the idea of trading property for some buildings on Hall Fletcher and filling up the campus with additional buildings. We might be trading future opportunities and handing in that building when it needs to be constructed down the road. I know that's a long-term concern. And I also wanted to say, EDU 119 at AB Tech. Thank you so much. I took that in 2011 when we kiddos to, as a hybrid course. It's fantastic. When my kid was in preschool, one of their fabulous teachers wanted so much to take a class, but was, would later be classified as a DACA kid. And she didn't qualify for in-state tuition. And so we have a lot of Spanish-speaking non-citizens who really need to be able to access. They are providing childcare. We want them to access the curriculum. So whatever we can do for those hurdles would be great as well. And that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you. So, yes.
Sorry, the sign-up sheet didn't circulate, and I guess I should have walked over there.
Yes.
Can I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're going to run over time. If that's acceptable. The committee members.
Sure.
Hopefully this is it.
Has a hand raised at some point. Maybe after.
Okay. Amy.
Okay, I just wanted to add a little bit to the reasoning behind the large numbers of kids who are experiencing social emotional behavioral challenges. And part of that is due to this very issue of high teacher turnover. So when we have a lot of new teachers who are inexperienced, I mean, here we heard about a veteran actual city schools teacher who was challenged. So talk about having a lot of new teachers with that lack of experience. And they're frustrated because of their inability to support kids in the way that they feel they should be supported. Then imagine that teacher leaves, could be the second or third teacher this child has had during the year. So trying to express getting their own needs met when there's a sort of lack of consistency around the caretaker really ratchets up the issue. So I also want to thank the committee for funding that they're providing to Buckle Partnership for Children to look at this very issue in partnership with families, child care providers, and professionals in the field. Last thing I wanted to add was around funding. I think it's important to note that some of the funding that we talked about for some of these programs is layered, and it's not because that's totally a crisis in the system. We know there's not enough state funding, and it's the Leandro funding recommendations had gone into effect. We have a lot more funding in child care. But it really does take all these levels, federal, state, county, private. So Dogwood Health Trust is helping fund Bunkum's Workforce Development Program, as is this committee, as is the walking funding from the Appalachian Regional Commission. It kind of takes that level of funding for these things to happen. And the wages program is funded, those supplements are funded solely by Bunkum Partnership for Children, and we increased the level of funding this year. BCD pays for the administration of that program, but we support the supplements. And we're really committed to finding a solution to be able to accept private money to add to those supplements. Right now, there's not, that's a glitch in the system. The private money can't be taken in by the agency that oversees wages. It can only come through local partnerships. So there's lots to do, and we're committed to do it.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Susan.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to reiterate some things I'd put in the chat about some of the studies. I know you all were asking about data. They're on the Dogwood Health Trust site under resources. There are a couple of studies around early childhood education analysis from the region, and another that looks at the TEACH program and wages and some of the things we've been talking about. And then I wanted to draw your attention to a recent study that's just been completed that adds to that data, but from the perspective of parents. And so that information is available on our website now, and there will be a webinar that's free webinar to sign up for on September 13th at 12 noon to 1:30 to hear a summary of the listening sessions to get the parents' perspective involved in that conversation. So that again is, I put that information in the chat, and perhaps that can be shared. So please pass that around.
If we could get that, that would be great. Okay, thanks, Susan. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 3rd from 1 to 2:30 here in this room again. Any other announcements from staff? Okay, then we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.